This is the Sports Central Podcast.
Coach, great to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too, Jamie.
A little reunion of sorts.
I know, exciting.
CBS and the Rams partnering again. We're excited about it.
So are we.
Great to be back. We'll have the coaches show this season. We're looking forward to it.
It'll be fun.
Looking into this season coming up. I mean, I know we're just getting started.
We
but
are.
What excites you?
The people. You know, that's the biggest thing. Is last year was one of the most fun teams that I've ever been around. I thought we played with courage. I thought guys were, they shot their shot. And we came up short sometimes. We had some tough losses. I love the resilience. I love the response. I love the growth that occurred in the midst of the journey. I think that team really celebrated each other's success. There was real enjoyment. And we got a lot of those guys coming back. We obviously lost some people. Really excited about the 4 players that we added, from, just in the professional ranks, with Trent McDuffie being able to trade for him, Jalen Watson. Those are 2 corners that we're really excited about. Jimmy Lake will do a good job leading that room. You add in Grant Stewart and you get Joe Cardona as the long snapper. Those guys will do a tremendous job. And 5 picks and a handful of other undrafted free agents, but a lot of continuity and a lot of hard work ahead, though, too.
You love the continuity, for sure. For you, going into year 10 with this organization, it's wild.
It's crazy.
Right? Has it gone by in the blink of an eye?
It has.
Or have you aged tremendously?
I think a little bit of both. It depends on what time of the year you ask me. This time of the year, I feel good. When we're doing the coaches show week 8, we'll see how I'm doing. But it's a blessing. I think when you go through the journey where you have 9 years, and in a lot of instances, you're always just continuing to become a better version of yourself. But I was really young, and you're continuing to grow into a man. And it's one thing to be able to handle things tactically or get up and say the right things to the team. But, interpersonally, are you continuing to develop? Are you leading? Are you leaning into some of those hard conversations, developing meaningful relationships, and having the appropriate perspective? Yeah. And I think there's a much better perspective. It doesn't mean that there's not those struggles, but I look at this as a blessing, not a burden, to quote my guy, Andrew Whitworth. And there's a lot more of those opportunities and those things that you don't take for granted.
You were really young when you started, obviously. 2017, you were the youngest head coach in the NFL at the time, 30 years old. When you look back on that version of yourself and that time in your life and knowing the experience that you've acquired in the years since then, what would you tell yourself at that point in time? What advice would you give to your younger self?
Well, I think, there's a couple things, Jamie. I think there was some beauty in kind of the youthful arrogance and the ignorance is bliss, where I often do have to remind myself not to worry about the things that I didn't even know to worry about right there. You coming in, and it was just such a blessing to get a chance to be a head coach, to do team meetings, to collaborate with the coaches and try to help put a light on our players. And I think that's the stuff you don't want to lose sight of. I think the advice that I would give myself are, lean into the failures, understand that adversity gives you opportunities for growth. And I used to say it, but I don't know if I really believed it. And then you end up getting exposed when you did go through a little bit of that adversity, but lean into those things, understand how important, having those difficult conversations. If you love people enough, it's about caring enough to be able to keep it real with them. And so those are some of the things, but, in the midst of the journey, I think you kind of just start to figure out what's that compass that helps guide you to be the best person or best husband and father, coach, whatever it is, friend, son, all those things. And doing that as a coach and doing that as those other things, they're all the same. And that's what I've kind of learned.
That's great perspective. When you talk about, telling it like it is, right? And people respect that.
Sure.
And I think, when you came in, youngest head coach at 30 years old, and then we saw a trend after that with younger head coaches across the league. Why do you think that sort of took off?
Well, I think, there were some other guys. Kyle Shanahan was hired in that cycle, and he was a young, really successful coach that I had worked under in Washington. And so I think like anything else, if there's some successful examples, and again, that success was a tribute to our players, the surrounding people, great organization and ownership. And so I was fortunate to be a part of that. But I think that, because we were able to do some cool things, people say, all right, well, there's some things that maybe can be replicated or you can use some things that we had been doing. The youth, I don't know if there's anything other than, we had some people that have gotten opportunities from here because they're great coaches. But I happen to be young, but there was a lot of learning in the midst of it, and feel fortunate to be going into year 10 because of how challenging this business is.
You had such an immediate impact on the franchise, and it's been a pretty successful decade under your coaching. Where does that success come from? If you had to kind of assess all of that.
Yeah. It's really simple, Jaime. It's being around great people. I do think that there's an element of, I think our job as coaches is to shine the light on our players. And what we wanted to try to be able to do when we got in here, and I think it's gotten better and better where there's clarity of, all right, what are the types of people that we want to onboard? What has worked out? What's their makeup? What's the character look like? And that's coaches, players, that's people in our organization. And then having the moving scale where there's some flexibility of being able to say, all right, based on what the league's doing, what are you doing tactically? But most importantly, what does it feel like when you come into this building? How do we act, interact, and respond? How do we demonstrate that we, them, me culture? And how do we make sure that, hey, there's a good urgency about how we move, but there's also enjoyment in the midst of pursuing, some really challenging things. It doesn't mean it's ever easy, but I do think we can have that urgency and that enjoyment. And when we're balancing those things, I think that's when we're at our best.
I'm sure that you lead by example in all of those.
I think that's the most important thing. And I'd like to think I'm doing that, but there's certainly times that I fall short for sure.
If you have a player fall short, how do you address that?
Well, I think there's a couple different things. When you're talking about, all right, let's just say a mistake is made. The enemy has a say. We always talk about this as coaches. Our players will never meet the enemy when they're coming off to the sideline during games. So we want to be able to be solution-oriented, be encouraging, and give them an opportunity to be resilient and be courageous to be able to respond. Now, if there's things that, we can control, the intangibles where we're not doing what we're supposed to do, well, that's when we don't have as much tolerance for that. You give people grace. I believe in, using everything as a learning op. You correct situations, not necessarily the person, but if there are things that there's a repeated behavior, that are things that we can control that are in alignment with the standards that we want to uphold. But what's really cool is that hasn't happened much. I know I made some mistakes. I've had learning opportunities where people gave me grace. I do believe you want to be able to do that. And I think it's been beneficial to not, pigeonhole ourselves into a one size fits all, other than let's understand the situation and the scenario. Let's give people grace and try to be able to put our arm around them as we try to move forward the right way instead of putting them in a headlock.
Yeah, good point.
That's right.
We just had the schedule release recently. Do you get pumped up for that?
You know what? I think the NFL does an amazing job of making everything relevant and exciting. And so I don't take that for granted. What I'll tell you is, Jaime, what I look at, who we opening with. Now, there was a little bit, we already kind of knew that we were going to Australia playing the 49ers. So that little bit of buzz that comes out when you release the schedule was down. And then I'm looking at, all right, where are our Thursday night games? Where's our bye? I do like, if you said all things being equal, do you like being able to play in the normal, 1 o'clock window? Yeah, we like that. But that's not what the schedule makers had for us. It's a blessing to get an opportunity to be able to just play in this league. I love the fact that everybody talks, easy schedule, hard schedule. I don't know that I've ever been a part of an easy schedule. Mm-hmm. This league is so difficult. But I do get excited about how the NFL does an amazing job of making everything interesting. Fans are passionate about it. And so I don't take that for granted, but probably don't get as excited about all the other things because we try to stay in the moment.
So you look at some of the bye week, obviously, is an important one for obvious reasons. But then you look at some of those primetime.
You notice those things.
Those
for
are a
sure.
little bit more difficult.
Yeah, what I would say that the ones that I don't like, what I'm looking at is I'm looking at the opener. Where's our bye, and then where are those Thursday games? Because that represents a mini bye after that. Mm-hmm. And where are those strategically kind of placed? Feel good about that. I would be lying to you if I said I didn't hate East Coast Monday night games because it feels like you are just waiting around for 3 weeks to play that game when you travel the day before and then you're just sitting around. Fortunately, the Monday night games we're playing are at home, so it's not as bad kicking off at 5 o'clock, but it's the opener, it's the bye, it's the Thursday games are really what I'm focused on.
Do you take a look at other teams' schedules?
Not as much,
not in the division?
I notice it, but I know, I'll always kind of say, all right, where do we play our division games just because, you're playing them twice a year, but what I would say is, and I really mean this too, and a lot of coaches say this, but it's like truly something that I do believe in. Let's be present. Let's be in the moment. Let's have great attention with the right intentions, and let's just stack days and be there one day at a time. And our goal is leading up to the season. Let's try to be ready to rock against the Niners in Australia and what's going to be a great challenge. And then after that, let's handle our business the right way. But there's so many things. Like, I know this. I used to be one of those coaches when I was younger where, not necessarily here, where you're kind of penciling in, you're looking at the schedule, and everybody wants to talk about, okay, you can win that. That's a tough stretch right there. Let's not, write the narrative before it's there. We're playing a lot of good teams on paper. And we'll see what that looks like as we navigate the season to try to be at our best.
You guys are a great team, so.
Got a chance to be.
Yes.
Yeah.
Have you been practicing your Australian accent?
I have not been practicing my Australian accent. I think I'll let people down.
But...
If I tried it, I am terrible at impersonations.
But I am excited about Australia.
I have never been, but what's cool is I've got a next door neighbor who we've become really close with that has a lot of close friends, that are, very successful in Australia. Even some of the people that our players met when they've gone and traveled there. And so they'll travel. We'll have some fun people, my family and our neighbors. They'll have a good contingent of people supporting us in front of a big time crowd.
I mean, you've been a part of a few of these international games. Yeah. What do you think that this one's going to be like? It's very cool. You guys are the first NFL team, along with the 49ers, be playing in Australia.
It is cool, and it's going to be a long trip. We have to be able to navigate it. I think the important thing is you lean on the sports performance, and our goal is to really say, we're going out there for a business trip. I think it's awesome that the league has expanded their international reach. More people care about football than ever before. I'm not naive to how important a lot of the revenue that comes from the TV and the just the big picture reach that we have is for our game. At the same token, hey, we're going there. We're not going to get a chance to stay in Australia long, but how do we really maximize, our players being ready to peak when kickoff is, and doing those types of things are the most important for me, while not minimizing what a cool deal it is to play there.
I mean, you are masterful with that, with looking at sleep schedules and time changes. I
have a lot of good people that guide that.
Fair,
yes.
but you prioritize it.
Sure.
So, and I know with the London game and against the Jaguars, you were very quick in and out.
Yeah.
What is the thought process for going down
I think it'll
under?
be something along those lines, and we'll see exactly what that looks like, Jamie. But I think the important thing is we have a lot of experience being a West Coast team going to East Coast and kicking off in a 3-hour time difference, and especially where sometimes it's at 10 o'clock in our head. And I think what we learned, especially during COVID, based on the nature of how we had to travel, it's like, hey, let's be ready to go. Let's try to keep a normalcy in terms of our rhythm and routine, and let's do the things that give them the best chance to peak. But the most important thing I tell our guys is everybody makes a big deal. The team that plays the best when the ball's kicked off in that 3.5-hour window wins the game.
Right.
I think a lot of people want to put, all right, time zone, stuff like that, and that's very important. But let's let the experts guide that. Let's make sure our players follow the protocol, but let's focus on the game and being ready to go and whatever we need to do to peak, even if it is crazy times in our head when we are kicking off.
Well, if the NFL's listening, do you have a wish list of maybe 3 more places internationally that you'd like to see them play games?
Yes, I got 3. LA. No, you know what? It is really cool, but I think what I don't take for granted. I mean, the London reach, and that holds a special place because our ownership group owns Arsenal as well. Just won the Premier League yesterday. Awesome deal for the first time in a handful of years, and you get an appreciation for how passionate they are about sports. We've had a couple experiences. It's been good experiences when we've played in London. We're 3-0 there, and so that represents some good memories. We were supposed to play in Mexico City. That never came to fruition, so we had that Monday night game against the Chiefs. But, wherever they send us, we'll be ready to go, and we'll embrace it and look at it as a blessing.
Let's talk about Matthew Stafford.
Yeah.
I mean, what a tremendous
the ageless wonder.
Talent. Yeah, ageless wonder, just like yourself, right?
Yeah, there you go. That's right. I'm not playing. He is, and still is just getting better and better.
When you see him, you're up close with him on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
Like, what is it that he does different than the others that is allowing him to be an ageless wonder?
I think the consistency at which he approaches things. Yeah. We always talk about consistency is the truest measurement of performance, Jamie. He's so consistent with his rhythm, his routine, his approach. And I think, especially last year, and I felt that from him throughout the course of his career, he enjoys playing. He loves competing. He doesn't have to do this. I don't think if he took another snap, I think he'd be a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's got his beautiful family with the 4 girls and Kelly, and I know how much that means to him, but he loves this game, and he loves what comes with it, building and developing those relationships. He and I have a really special one where I think, our rapport is something that I don't know if you'll ever find that again. The way that we see the game through the same lens, but I think we really balance each other out. Our personalities, we have a lot of similarities, but then we also have those differences that I think make it a really cool, complement to one another. And I've learned a lot from him. I love working with him, but the consistency of his work, the consistency of his approach, his preparation, and then the mental and physical toughness. Those are separators for him.
And you both are football junkies.
Yeah.
Well, what have you learned from him?
You know what? I think I've just learned about how much capacity he has, the inventory that he can pull from. I've learned watching him navigate being a great father, and how he is with those girls. But I've also witnessed a guy that really enjoys playing and how pure it can be. And when we're connected and when we're on the same page and just watching him be able to go do his thing, I think our job as coaches is, hey, we know that, we're very fortunate as coaches to have a lot of great players that can do some really special things. But one of our jobs is to help shine the light on them and put them in situations that allow them to shine and have successful outcomes. And that's really rewarding for us.
I know in the past you've said you don't have a ton of hobbies.
Yeah.
Like you're football.
That's right.
Through and through.
Yeah.
I mean, as a father now of
Yeah.
2 young boys, congratulations.
Thank you.
By the way.
Appreciate that.
Has that changed for you? Do
Yeah,
you have some more hobbies
here's what
now?
I would say. I think and I've always liked to stay active, gotten into, playing tennis, play pickleball, because we're having these boys and, when Jordan gets old enough, whether it's playing pickleball in the backyard or shooting hoops. So I have fun with him. We got a trampoline that he loves to jump on. I love swimming with him. So being able to spend time with him, but then I also like to get exercise. It's a good recovery for me. Staying active, awesome living in a place where the weather is so nice. So I'm a big homebody, but I like being outdoors. Hobbies would be, I like pickleball, basketball, playing tennis, and just being outdoors. And then I like just chilling out and watching a show every now and then too with my wife.
What are you watching?
So we're looking for a new show right now.
Okay.
You got any recommendations?
I don't watch enough shows.
Yeah, we watch Landman. I've gotten into, we were watching Paradise. So, like Taylor Sheridan, the stuff he does, and Dan Fogelman, been a big fan of those guys. So that's what we're watching. And then, watch documentaries and stuff like that too.
Ooh, what documentaries?
I just watched one on, it's like I watched like Man City's documentary on the All or Nothing.
Yeah.
I've watched Arsenal's, so I love those
sports
type
documentary.
of,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
There you go. No balance.
No balance.
That's right.
I love that, by the way. Good for you.
Yes.
You know your strengths.
That's
there.
right. I know what I like.
Let's go back to draft day.
Yeah.
13th overall pick for the Rams,
Sure.
highest draft pick that you've had while you've been
Sure.
a head coach here. You go with the QB.
Yeah.
Made some noise with that.
I didn't hear about that.
You didn't hear about that?
No, that was relatively quiet.
What do you think about that?
Here's what I would
do you think about
say.
him as a player?
What I think is I think we like the body of work on film. I think we also, had a lot of other things that were in consideration, but I think when you really look at it, he's a guy that you like the body of work. I'm hopeful that Matthew will continue to play as long as possible. Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't re-sign. We've got a guy that's emerging in Stetson Bennett, but his body of work, there was other people that we really thought about. And I think the biggest thing I would say is what I regret about that night is that it became a big deal about my demeanor and disposition. Would have handled that better. If I could do that over, I would certainly do that over, because you don't want to minimize what a cool night it was for Ty, any of the misunderstanding about Les and I being kind of connected and united. But, we're excited to welcome all of our rookies, Ty being included in that, with open arms and see where they earn the right to be able to contribute and be a factor for us in this team. And Ty knows that he's coming in to really learn, and he's got a great guy that he can learn from in Matthew Stafford.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the best for sure.
No doubt.
What do you like to do during the months leading up to the preseason to kind of build camaraderie with guys?
Spend time with them.
Just time.
I think love is spelled Time, and so build and develop relationships. That's what's cool about the off season. There's natural restrictions on what we can do, Jamie. And so, when the players get in here, it's meetings, it's lifts. Then you start to transition to get some field work. Then it leads into practices. But right now, hey, let's welcome the 23, new rookies with open arms. Let's continue to get to know each other, have an appreciation for the things that, are special to other people, their families. We got a lot of guys that are having children now, and they're in a fun age that, I'm kind of newly coming into as well. But more than anything, just building and develop relationships, building our schemes, trying to be able to see how we can adapt, evolve, and ultimately, come together as a team.
What's been the biggest shock for you becoming a dad?
I think here's what I would tell you. It's an appreciation that I have as how much energy my 2.5-year-old Jordan takes when you're with him, all day. Like sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, Veronica, it's amazing what you're able to do, because he wakes up at 6:30 or 6 o'clock and he is ready to go from the jump. And then you're looking at yourself, and it's so fun, so enjoyable, but I'm gassed by the time noon hits, where now he needs a nap. And he's out for about an hour and 45, 2 hours, and then he is up from about 2 o'clock until 7, and those 5 hours, it is full throttle.
It sounds like he's got some of Dad's energy.
That's exactly right. I look at him and I say, oh, he's in deep doo-doo right there. But he is so fun. I think the shock, though, is just the amount of energy, and what an awesome thing it is. That certainly isn't a shock, but, the amount of energy, where I feel like I need a nap when I'm taking care of the kids. Sometimes I'm like, man, I need to get back to work, but it's the best.
Yeah. Growing up in Atlanta, right?
I did.
Went to high school there. Football player of the year, high school football player of the year, offensive.
That's a very overblown deal.
Calvin Johnson.
We were a good team. We won the
state. You beat Calvin Johnson for offensive player of the year.
Here's the thing. I think my dad found a way to get into the voting and ended up, skewing the votes for the AJC. But here's the one thing that was never misunderstood. Calvin Johnson was a 5-star player, had offers from everywhere in the country. I had a couple different offers, but I was a quarterback of a team that was really good, where we won the state championship. But Calvin was him. There's a reason why he's a Hall of Fame player, and I'm still coaching.
When you look, I was coaching, was that a natural segue for you?
Yeah, I think so. I've always loved this game. I've loved the people that you come in contact with this. I've loved the tactical part of it. I grew up in a football family, and I didn't even really realize, Jaime, what a blessing it was to subconsciously take things in from my grandfather. My dad was in a leadership role as a general manager of a television station, but that still encompassed a lot of the principles that we try to apply with how we lead and how we motivate and inspire. But yeah, it's been something that I can't picture myself doing anything else. I've always loved this game, and I knew I wanted to be involved in the game, whether that was playing, whether that was coaching, maybe even getting into personnel. But then when you start to really transition from finishing your playing career, the interaction with the players, the coaches, the people, that's what lights me up the most. I love the tactical part of the game, but it's the relationships that are built in the midst of the journey. And that's what lights me up the most about it.
I've read that you like to read coaching and leadership books.
Yeah.
What's on the Kindle? Do you read a Kindle or audio books?
I like the hard copy books. And I'll listen to some stuff, when I'm just kind of listening, if I'm doing, because I multitasking, but I'm not smart enough when I'm reading a book.
You probably multitask
but you know what?
Long.
I actually have learned that that's not really a good way to be able to digest things. Like I might read something when I'm just riding like the Peloton, or if I'm watching film, I'll have something on in the background like a podcast or an audio book. But if I'm really trying to read something, I am, really not smart enough to do anything other than lock in and focus. So I like the hard copies. I'll annotate the books, and then I'll go back and kind of type the notes. Because what I try to read is something I'm interested in.
You're taking notes in the books, and then you go back and
what's cool is a lot of the things that I learn in these books that we read are things that we talk about in team meetings that we try to really be able to apply. And so to be able to have, an ownership of the material, I'm not smart enough to read something once and then be able to regurgitate it to our players. So repetition's the mother of learning. I need reps going back through this, but there's a lot of cool books that I love to read. I'm always trying to learn and grow and constantly being curious. And so, book that I just finished up, The Way of Excellence by Brad Stolberg, amazing book. He's written a bunch of really good books. He's written a couple with a guy named Steve Magnus as well, like Do Hard Things, Passion Paradox, and things that are really all about trying to be able to have the appropriate perspective, navigating, pursuing hard things, but having the right perspective and not being so driven by some of the societal things, but more about the personal scoreboard.
So much of coaching and being an athlete, you have itineraries, right? Like it's a schedule.
That's right. There's a rhythm.
Does that apply to your home life?
You know what?
Because with little ones, it's hard, right?
Yeah, well, my wife's really good about keeping our boys on a rhythm because the sleep schedules are really important.
Yeah.
Let's try to have them on a consistent routine. So yes, but I also, here's what I would say. I'm not the head coach at my house. I follow my wife's lead. And so what I want to make sure is that when I'm home, because you're always thinking about stuff, but let's be present when you're at home and leave your work at home. So finish everything up, be there. And it's really been, being married going into, we'll celebrate our 4th anniversary in June, having 2 little boys, sometimes you look and you always knew that the most important thing was to really be able to, find a wife that you could share life with. And then, if you were fortunate and blessed enough to be able to have kids. And it's something that I have a much better perspective and an appreciation, a lot of gratitude. It's the most important thing in my life. And then when you apply those things, you know, to the professional life, you're better in those things too. So that's been really cool.
I know that you're very, you know, you're health conscious.
Yeah.
Exercise, you know, it's all important. But what is Sean McVay's guilty pleasure?
Oh, I love sweets. I mean, I love ice cream.
What
I love
kind?
cookies.
What flavor?
Oh, you give me anything, I'll take it. You know,
not particular.
I don't discriminate. So, but I love sweets. But I try to be pretty disciplined, and I can be.
Is there a cheat day? Is there one day?
You know what? The off season, I have some fun. You know, I've gotten better where you know, when my wife was pregnant with our second son, you know, I used to like to have, you know, a vodka here and there, and I still will, you know, like to drink, whether it's a tequila, vodka, I'll have a beer, but we drank less, you know, and obviously I was with her where when she wasn't drinking at all, I kind of just followed suit. And so I felt really good doing that, but I still love the sweets.
So ice cream, that's the go-to.
Ice cream, cookie. I mean, you put any, I'm not a big candy guy, but you put like cookies, cake, ice cream. I'm a sucker for all that.
Were you always that way?
Yeah, pretty much. I blame Tim McVay. My dad has been a big snacker all his life, and I watch him and I'm like, you know, and then I'll say some things and they're like, that is so your dad. And I'll take it, but I'm becoming Tim McVay by the day.
Well, who makes better cookies, Veronica or your mom?
My mom
This is
doesn't
a tricky
really,
question.
Oh, Veronica. That's
Okay.
definitely Veronica, you know, but usually we're ordering the cookies.
Awesome. Thank you.
Very cool.
So good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you too.